Did you know, on Elden Ring's launch day, the game pulled in a whopping 764,000 players on Steam, topping all of their previous titles combined, and even putting the game at third for most concurrent number of players on Steam currently, just behind CSGO in second and then Lost Ark in first. Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Tyler, and today I wanted to share my thoughts on Elden Ring. Before we begin, I want to admit that I am not a seasoned Souls player at all. The only Souls experience I have was maybe an hour in the original Dark Souls, where I will give credit that I beat the first boss, but I couldn't get much further after that. So this review may be more beneficial to players who are inexperienced to Souls games or even brand new to them, as I'm in the same boat as you. So just like my previous video, check that out if you haven't. I'm going to be answering a question letter by letter throughout the video. It will be scrambled, so you may want to write it down if you want to guess it. Today's question is, what is your favorite game series? The first letter is E, and my answer is going to be 2 words, so keep that in mind. So starting off with the plot, Elden Ring takes place in the realm of the Lands Between, where the Elden Ring has shattered and corrupted the people of the land. You play as a Tarnished, an exile of the Lands Between that has been reawakened by the shattering, with the goal to bring peace back to the land by restoring the Elden Ring. So now that we got the plot out of the way, let's get into what I like about Elden Ring, and then we'll get into some of the things I don't like. Starting off with the good, this game is dangerously addictive. So I cannot nail down exactly what is pulling me into this game so heavy, but I have not been this addicted to a game since probably Resident Evil Village. I think it's a combination of the exploration, the satisfaction of progressing, and the engaging combat scenarios that provide this game with a killer gameplay loop. Because this is an open world Souls game, nothing in the map is marked and there is very little direction given other than the path of the main objective. So venturing off the beaten path is often very exciting and equal parts just as rewarding. Some of the best equipment is found tucked away in easy to miss areas, so make sure you do plenty of exploring. Another addicting aspect of this game is the satisfaction of progression. Like any Souls game, you're going to be dying a lot, so it makes all the more satisfying when you finally overcome that difficult boss or group of enemies you may have been stuck on for longer than you'd like. There's a little group of soldiers very early on that is, in my opinion, this game's first test for you. While most of the enemies within this camp are easy to defeat, taking them all on at once is near impossible, so you have to sneak around and pick each of the enemies off one by one. There's a captain-like officer within this camp too, and he has a very nice variety of attacks, forcing you to use everything you've learned up to this point to defeat him. I remember finally defeating this camp after probably 45 minutes to an hour of dying and jumping out of my chair in excitement. There is no better feeling as a gamer than overcoming a challenging obstacle, as it shows not only that you are improving within the game, but also as a player in general. It's why these games are so loved by its niche of players, because they're addicted to the progression, no matter how many controllers they sacrifice in the process. Another thing I really like about Elden Ring is the environment itself. This game is gorgeous. Exploring this landscape of familiar open fields, dark caves, wooden huts, and stone castles gives you this feeling of safety, as it's all familiar and to be expected in a fantasy world. But it's when you come across the unfamiliar where this environment really shines. The fear of the unknown is very much prevalent in this game, as most of the monsters lurking about are designed to look imposing, so approaching them is very ballsy. The world also tells its own story, as it feels like everything normal died in place, leaving only the corrupt to wander the lands. You will find dead bodies still sitting in chairs, carts broken down in the middle of the road, and ruins where villages once stood, showing that even though the people are gone, their stories remain. As a side note, since this environment is set in an open world, it also adds another layer to the gameplay. Because a large portion of the world within Elden Ring is available to you at the start, it allows you to leave an area that you're struggling with and come back when you're more powerful. This is a huge step for Souls games because they were always relatively linear, so if you got stuck, you either had to keep trying to succeed or just give up altogether. I think this level of accessibility will definitely help new players who may struggle against some of the bosses early on in the game. The next thing I really like about Elden Ring is the massive variety of enemies. So in my time playing, I've only ventured through a small portion of the first area, Limgrave, but I've easily discovered over 10 different enemies already. These enemies range from soldiers, to wildlife, to giant bats, and what's cool is that every enemy type has its own set of attacks to learn and overcome. Along with this, No two bosses have the same moveset either. Each boss within this game is its own beast, as they have all different attacks as well as different aggression levels. Some bosses are extremely aggressive and attack in long, fast flurries, only letting up for short periods, while other bosses are more defensive and hit like a truck, punishing you for your mistakes. On top of all of that, most bosses also have multiple phases throughout their fight where they gain new attack strings and sometimes even new weapons. This makes mastering each boss very important, as they all have so many attacks and personalities you can very quickly get stomped on if you don't learn them all. The final thing I really like about Elden Ring is the gameplay additions they made from the previous Souls games. In Elden Ring, you can now call upon a spectral steed to ride, as well as summoning the spirits of fallen warriors to aid you in combat. The horse adds so much to the gameplay as it becomes a whole new way to approach a combat scenario. Have an enemy who attacks very slowly? Ride in on a horse and take quick slashes at him as he struggles to match your speed. Outmanned? Ride your horse right out of that danger and regroup yourself before trying again. The horse gives you so many options when approaching a fight, but besides combat, the horse is obviously also very good for traversal as well. While giving you a very fast way to traverse the lands between, the horse also has a very useful double jump, which allows you to reach areas not accessible if you were on foot. Alongside the horse, the spirits are another new addition to the game, and they are equally as awesome. While initially not very damaging, spirits offer you something equally as important, maybe even more important, a distraction. Like I said earlier, some bosses are relentless, so having a distraction can be very helpful to get a vital heal in or even dish out a high damage combo that wouldn't be possible normally. Besides difficult bosses, spirits are also very helpful in high density areas as they pull off some of the heat from you, allowing you to face a large group of a few enemies at a time. They really can be the difference between success and defeat, as the distraction they create is monumental. So now that we went through everything I like about Elden Ring, let's talk about some of the things I don't like, starting off with the clunkiness of combat. So I know that this is a combat system that's a staple of the genre, but it just feels so outdated. I was extremely surprised to see how little has changed in the core fundamentals of combat from the original Dark Souls game, which came out over 10 years ago. Alongside the overall clunky feeling movement, not being able to cancel an action by rolling leaves you vulnerable when you accidentally hit the wrong button or hit a button too many times. If you hit the attack button multiple times within short successions of each other, your character is going to swing on all of these inputs. It's not uncommon in stressful situations that players begin spamming buttons, but in this game you are severely punished for it. Especially early on, I remember spamming the attack button on enemies and then getting crushed because they would do an uninterruptible attack and I'd still be swinging at them, with no chance of getting out of their way. With many different inputs controlling the vast amount of controls throughout this game, there's no doubt newer players will be also hitting the wrong buttons until they get comfortable. There's been times in the middle of an intense battle where I've hit the wrong button, like accidentally healing with no health items left, and it has cost me the battle. When you go on the offense, you have to really be committed because there is no going back once you start. I realize that this is part of the difficulty, and the more I keep playing, the more comfortable I'm getting. But being able to cancel an action with a roll I think would be game changing and really help lower that skill gap. Another thing I don't like about Elden Ring is the underwhelming character creator. This is a very minor issue to me personally, as you're most likely going to be wearing a helmet or hat for most of the game, but I'm seeing on Twitter that a lot of players are complaining because they can't make the exact character they're looking to make. This is very surprising for a game releasing in 2022, as every game with a character creator has a vast selection of appearances for characters of all races and genders. Hopefully as time goes on, FromSoft will continue evolving the character creator with more hairstyles and customization options, as it is a bit bare bones in its current state. And then just to add on to this, I think it would be really cool if there was a no helmet option added, as it's very hard to see the face of that character that you spent a good amount of time working on. Most modern RPGs have a no helmet option, so again, I'm a bit surprised it's not here at launch. The final issue I have with Elden Ring is the difficulty. Now I'm sure all the longtime Souls fans were waiting for this part, so they can bombard my comment section with get goods, but just hear me out. My problem isn't necessarily with the difficulty of the game per se, but rather the lack of guidance that this game gives you early on. While longtime Souls fans I'm sure will have no problem figuring it out, this game is also bringing a huge trove of brand new players into the fray, so giving them very little to work with will most likely turn some of them away. I had to pull up YouTube and watch some tips and tricks videos to really learn some strategies, as this game gives you all the puzzle pieces, but doesn't help you at all with putting them together. When I was stuck early on at that camp with the commanding soldier, I wasn't getting mad because it was too difficult. I was getting mad because I didn't know how to approach the combat scenario. Nothing I tried seemed to work, and there was nothing in the game that could help me guide in the right direction. It was actually tips that I learned through YouTube that got me through that section. While I don't mind using YouTube to help teach me the ways of Elden Ring, I'm sure some casual players will not be that devoted and patient. To go along with this, some of the bosses are ridiculous too. It took me roughly 6 to 8 hours to finally be good enough to defeat the first story boss. His relentless aggression combined with his cheesy use of projectiles made him very tough for me to defeat. While I may be newer to the Souls style, I am by no means a new gamer, so if I'm struggling this much with a boss, I can only imagine a large group of players will never even make it past the first story boss. So I believe that Elden Ring is going to revolutionize the Souls-like genre with all of its new added mechanics. While the combat in these games I feel still needs a little fine-tuning, the addition of the horse and spirits is game-changing. A fully open-world game in this genre is also something never before seen, and it works so well. The way all of the new aspects and mechanics of Elden Ring bounce off the classic Souls-like experience just really works, and I think it's something we're going to be seeing a lot more of in the coming future. So what do I think of Elden Ring? Honestly, that depends on how many times I've died when you ask. No, seriously though, I am loving Elden Ring. Although most nights end with me rage quitting off of this game, it isn't long before I want to give it another try and try a new idea. Although sometimes I will definitely admit I wish this game was a little bit easier, it is truly satisfying when you finally overcome a hurdle you've been stuck on for a very long time. I'm addicted to Elden Ring, and I don't see myself playing much of anything else until I complete this game, or until Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is due. The good far outweighs the bad for me in this game, so I'm going to give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. While I'm definitely not complaining about all of the features they added to help the new players out, I think if it was just a little more accessible for us newbies, this would be a near perfect title. I was not very hyped for Elden Ring, to be honest, as I plan to sit this one out, but I'm glad I got swept up in all the hype because this game is fantastic. So should you buy Elden Ring? I have to say, do not give in to the hype. If you are a very casual player and do not plan on really investing yourself into this game, I guarantee you will quit within 2 hours of playing. This game is very difficult and you will be dying and raging possibly more often than you'll be winning and cheering. If stupidly difficult games are not for you, skip this one. But if you can invest into the gameplay and really commit to improving, Souls vet or not, I'd highly recommend giving this game a try. I'd even say if you're still really on the fence, maybe watch a few more reviews and some gameplay, or just pick it up when it goes on sale. This style of game only permeates with a very small niche of gamers, and does not let up at all no matter how much you're struggling. Keep in mind the game is designed this way, and if you keep practicing and studying the area you're stuck on, eventually you'll overcome it. I am overall having a blast. While things do get me aggravated and I rage quit this game almost daily still, the sheer accomplishment you feel when progressing past something you were stuck on is highly addicting. While Dying Light 2 personally for me lived up to its hype, I've noticed that the community is very divided on this game. But unlike Dying Light 2, Elden Ring is getting universal praise, and that is so nice to see. Finally, a game in this post-pandemic era that delivered on everything it promised. I believe this game is most certainly Game of the Year material. Who would have ever thought FromSoft would potentially win Game of the Year on their last 2 games, considering they only make this Souls style of game? But what did you think? If you liked my video, feel free to like and subscribe. I'd love to have you on the journey. What is your favorite video game series? Comment that, as well as your thoughts on Elden Ring down in the comments, and until next time, have a great day.